So welcome again, everyone who's seeing this right now. This is a special episode from AUIB, where we talk, of course, in special episodes about medicine. But today we're going to talk about the interrelation between law and medicine, of course. And with me, I have Dr. John Byrk, the Dean of College of Law. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you very much for having me.
And of course, Dr. Abduljabbar, Hamid, plastic surgeon. How are you?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me again.
Well, yeah, you have been
This is
here
Excel.
for a lot of episodes.
Exactly, this is the third one.
What-
We're going to go.
But today we have Dr. John Byrk for the first time, and actually we are so happy to have you here, especially in the radio station. And I know for the fact we're going to talk about things really matters, and maybe it matters also to the medicine, especially when we talk about the law and medicine.
Yes. First, I want to just clarify for any listeners of the show. I do not specialize in the area of medicine and law. My specialty actually is in what you'd call economics, finance, banking.
Yeah.
But I have familiarity with the general principles in the United States and in the European Union, where I have worked for quite some time.
Yeah, so it is really a knowledge, a big knowledge for you to know about maybe this field.
I have some knowledge, and particularly I've been researching since I spoke with the doctor the other day
Yeah.
to bring myself up to speed. So I have an overview of the general principles that I think we'll talk about today. But of course, I don't have the depth of knowledge of someone who would devote their profession in this area.
Yeah, of course, it's a conversation here.
Yes.
It's definitely interesting. It's very interesting field with its own ethical and lawful dilemmas, actually.
Yeah.
It's on daily basis we face a lot of conflicts, sometimes conflicts of interest, how to treat a patient according to what he wants or what his family wants, especially if he is mentally incapacitated or he's not fully conscious, or sometimes, for example, if he has a neurodegenerative disease where his ability to mentate is declining with time. So it's a field with his own, what can you say, special and conflicts, especially regarding the regulation and policies that regulates its scope field.
Well, of course, first, I know that we are doing this because there's issues, especially here inside Iraq, and about like what is the law says maybe about medicine and the medical conditions, especially if some maybe like the people, the citizens don't know a lot about this kind of law. We're not gonna talk in particular about the laws, but we're gonna maybe try to clarify a few things, and I want to start from the HIPAA.
HIPAA is actually, it's an abbreviation for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It's actually a law passed by the Congress and signed by Bill Clinton in 1996. It regulates the handling of confidential and private information of patients, how the health institute deals with such information, who is allowed to have an access to such information, and what we should do as doctors treating patients. And by the way, it's a law that regulates such field in the United States. It's not in Iraq. To give you a much deeper information regarding this, the laws that regulate health service in Iraq is actually influenced by other means. For example, we have our different religious and social constructs in our community. So we have kind of shared law in Iraq, Syria, Egypt, Lebanon, and even in Libya.
It is nearly the same.
It's nearly the same because basically it's all stems from the Islam as a religion of the majority who lives in these countries.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of concepts that is found in HIPAA that is not here in Iraq. And by the way, there is kind of what can you say? We are lacking in some points because now we have emerging dilemmas, emerging problems that our laws need to accommodate. For example, the right of death. I think Dr. John can give us more information about what in the same time I can give you real life case scenarios. I wouldn't forget this patient. It's a patient that presented to our hospital with inflammation of the coverings of the brain. So basically the brain is covered by 3 layers. It's called meninges, and he had an inflammation in these covers. This inflammation extends into the brain itself. So the patient went into a coma. I would like you to imagine for 3 weeks he was comatose and he was clinically, let's say, brain dead.
Yeah, that's a hard experience, actually.
It's very hard experience for the family and for the patient himself, because
of course.
Death is defined in Iraq by the failure of 3 systems: brain, or the central nervous system, the circulatory system, or the heart, and the respiratory system, which is or the lungs. So all these systems should stop to say this patient is dead.
When they are not stopped,
or even
he's gonna be alive.
Okay, he's alive according to the law.
According to the law,
he's alive.
So there is a difference between
Definitely
here
there's a
and
difference.
outside, maybe Europe and America.
What we did in our hospital, because basically, again, our rules, our policies and laws in our country are influenced by the view of Islam of life. You should, as a physician, and this is under oath, by the way. Once we graduate from med school, we have an oath to provide the health care to the last minute. Whatever it costs. So basically, we should support this patient and we should keep him on these life-supporting devices, which including a ventilator to give him the oxygen he needs until God's will. So until Allah will to end his life. So we supported this patient for 3 months. Can you imagine? He's
3 months.
3 months. And by the way, caring for a patient who is in a bed differs from a patient who is let's say that he can walk, because you are thinking of more complications. He can't move, so he will develop pressure ulcers or pressure or sores.
Of course,
and definitely will have lung infections and a lot of complications that comes with bedridden patients.
Well, from that I want to go to Dr. John and talk about, maybe I was hearing you talking about the HIPAA actually before we come inside here, and you noticing right now, Dr. Abdulgabbar is talking about the situation maybe here. What is the difference?
Well, the first thing I'd like to mention is, as the doctor has already said, HIPAA is a federal law. It was enacted in 1996, and the privacy rule actually was not part of the original legislation. It came later, about 3 or 4 years later. And the privacy rule is all about the protection of health data. What does it really mean? It means information about my health that would allow identification of me. And this is what it protects. But the most fascinating question, in my opinion, is who is the owner of this right? So if you read the HIPAA privacy rule, it definitely begins with the ownership right in the patient, and any use of that information you would think would require the patient's consent. But that is not the case. So in many cases, yes, in order to use this information, the patient must give consent. But HIPAA also provides for what's called written authorization, where the patient would sign a contract And in that contract has the capacity to waive many rights associated with the health data that the patient is going to provide through the hospital or healthcare provider or physician. And in some cases that would even lead, as the doctor and I were talking about, to the use of this information for research. Then next to that, or making it more complex, there are exceptions to the rule where you do not need the patient's consent. And that would be naturally for emergency treatment. Second, it would be for collecting payment of a bill from the patient. So in this case, protected health information can be transmitted from one healthcare provider to another in order to collect the payment that the patient owes to whatever provider is involved. But as I was also telling the doctor, that before HIPAA, privacy rights were much stronger.
Oh, the privacy
so
was stronger.
It was the patient-physician right, which is rooted in Roman and ecclesiastical law. So now you're talking about it's coming from Europe, was basically incorporated in the United States. You can never say that a rule is absolute, because it's never absolute.
Yeah.
But that really protected the private information of a person. Now in this arena of more complexity, larger health institutions, technology, and so on, in my view, this privacy right is diminishing. It's not extinct, but it is diminishing. And it's a trade-off between public policy, better health care, and of course the right of the patient to the information.
If we talk about the privacy, there's not much more in privacy actually with the HIPAA.
Well, as I said, you still have, the patient still has the privacy right, but there are many exceptions to the rule, and of course the patient may always waive those rights. But also, as I was saying to the doctor, the way you waive the right is you may enter a physician's facility. You're handed a standard form contract to sign, check some boxes, and you've waived rights to the use of your health information. But one other thing I would like to address is that the doctor has brought up, and I think it's very important, is this idea of when a patient is unable to give consent, when they're unconscious. And also the doctor had brought up the situation where a person is in a persistent vegetative state. What do you do with the person? Well, first, if a person is in an unconscious state and this condition is due to something sudden, violent, or unexpected, the doctor actually has an obligation to treat the person in the appropriate manner according to whatever protocols that particular facility has adopted. And this is under what's called the doctrine of necessity. The second and more complicated one is a patient arrives at the hospital with essentially brain damage. So there's this very famous case going back to 1976, Karen Ann Quinlan, a young woman from the state of New Jersey, and no one really knows what happened, but she drank some combination of alcohol and perhaps some other substance, and she became unconscious. Her friends attempted to provide mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. By the time she was taken to the hospital, she was completely unconscious. And at that point, the physicians studied her condition and determined that for certain periods of time, her brain had been deprived of oxygen and she entered a persistent vegetative state. What to do? So naturally, they put her on life-sustaining equipment, but her condition never improved.
Okay.
Then it became a question. Her parents, who were religious, they were Catholics, and they believed that life should take its it's an ordinary course, and that it shouldn't be prolonged with the use of artificial equipment.
Yeah.
And they wanted to have the physicians remove any artificial support systems and let her die naturally. The hospital refused, maintaining that this would be equivalent to homicide. The prosecutor became involved and said, yes, this would be an illegal death, and went to a court and stopped the guardian, who would be the father of the family, from issuing a direction to the doctors to take her off of the life-sustaining equipment. This case went on for 10 years, until finally it got to the New Jersey Supreme Court, which is the highest court in a state. It never went to the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah.
But the court ultimately decided that, yes, there could be this this death with dignity. That so the court decided that, yes, it would empower the guardian, in conjunction with the ethics committee of the hospital, to make a determination that if they determined and found that there really wasn't any realistic opportunity for her recovery, that she could be removed from the life-sustaining equipment. And that is what happened. They removed her from the life support system, and she died. I don't know exactly how much time she remained alive, but she died shortly thereafter. Now, states like New Jersey, there are about 8 of them. They have this Death with Dignity Act, or the Right to Die Act. So you can, these states permit someone who's in a condition like this Karen Ann Quinlan to be removed from life support systems and to die. But as the doctor had already mentioned, what is usually required is what's called a health directive or an advance directive. It's simply a contract where when I am fully capable, I have full competence, I give to the doctor the authority to make decisions on my behalf in the event I become incapacitated, such as would be the case if I became unconscious. What to do? The doctor would have the authority to make decisions on my behalf. Now, those decisions, I can limit them because I'm actually forming a contract with the doctor, and I could say, well, under circumstance X, I want solution Y. Under circumstance A, I want solution B, so on and so forth. So they can be very detailed, or they may just be general. But in any event, it could say something as simple as this: if I become incapacitated, and the medical view is that I'm really not going to be able to recover, if the person who holds this advance directive, they can tell the physicians, remove all life supporting systems, and we'll see what happens. Most of the time you die.
Well, do we have the same thing here by signing the paper that says you just like you're okay with everything gonna happen?
Actually, no. So basically, let's discuss this part of HIPAA, which is advanced directives. Advanced directives, it gives the patient himself or someone who the patient chooses. It's called health proxy or health surrogate. Someone can take decisions regarding his life or death, or the way we should treat this patient once his ability to make decisions just disappears. For example, we have 2 famous cases. The first one, when the patient loses his ability to make decisions gradually over time. For example, in cases of Alzheimer's disease, in some cases of psychiatric illnesses like schizophrenia, for example, maybe psychosis, maybe dementia, and other psychological cases where, for example, for example, Alzheimer's disease, it's a neurodegenerative disease. It takes time that all the brain cells will not be able to help or sustain the patient mentation. So basically, we are talking about 20 years. So, for example, if he is aged 60, if his age was 60, he has a mentation of 9 of 10. Now he can make or sign a paper that will guide or help the doctors make the right decisions for him when he is 80. So, yeah, exactly.
So he's like, everything gonna happen
Like-
to him in the future.
That's why
Yes.
it's called advanced.
Yeah.
Like
It's-
he's planning the way we should take care of him in advance.
Yeah.
And by the way, in the United States, it kind of break down into codes. There is what we call a full code. Once I need a CPR or resuscitation, you do a full CPR. It's called a full code. Sometimes it's
Yeah,
called
or don't do the CPR.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's called
Yeah.
DNR. It's called DNR.
Yeah.
Do not resuscitate. And sometimes they have AND, which is allowed natural death. Once I need, for example, a resuscitation, you stop that, or there's only a chemical code. You give me only drugs. You are not allowed to give me a DC shock or other. So, or sometimes you need, you can hire somebody, or you choose somebody, for example, one of your relatives. So to be the health proxy or the health surrogate, he will take the decisions instead of you. This is in case of a gradual loss of mental capacity. But regarding
I think this case is famous here in Iraq because when like someone entering the hospital, and especially when he's old, the decisions and everything gonna go just like to the older son or
exactly
the relatives.
The relatives, and this is not regulated by any law. So it's like it's not regulated by a law.
No.
So this son is not. What can I say? It's not. It's
Professional.
It's not. He's not a professional, and he is not allowed to take a decision regarding his father because again, it is not his life. He is who controlling. He's not controlling his life, and he's not controlling the decisions that affect his life. He's taking the decisions regarding other. So we have kind of a dilemma or kind of a gap.
This is
here.
a big
It's
subject
really huge.
that I really want to like deep dive in it, but not now actually because we are suffering, I think, from this actually, doctor, locally. I mean, because it's the decisions. It's not about the medical decisions. It's about, do you trust the doctor? Do you trust the hospital? And I think this is the issue here sometimes.
Actually, exactly. All the doctors vowed to provide the best care available for them, for the patients.
Yeah.
It's according to the health facilities the health facility you are in, what is available. So you are vowed to provide the best for the patient, and again, it's on the doctor's conscience to provide this care. It's not regulated by a certain law, but this is what we are here, or this is why we are here. We need an advice, and we need to consult international firms and international experts like Dr. John to extend our policies and extend our regulations to cover such issue. Another example is when we have a sudden loss of consciousness or sudden loss of the mental capacity. As the doctor mentioned, persistent vegetative state. To give some context, what we mean by persistent vegetative states, basically, it's a brain damage that happens below a certain level. It's a level of midbrain. Basically, the patient turns into a vegetable. That's why it is a vegetative. He becomes just like a plant. He can't move. He can breathe. He can eat, but he can't move. And sometimes he retains some of his eye movements, so he can move only his eyes. He can speak. It's very tragic thing. And actually, it needs its own laws that regulates how we could treat such patients.
We can't here prevent CPR, right?
No, you are not allowed to do that.
Yeah,
because again, it's all of our
related to religious reasons.
Yes.
Yeah. So
this is regarding the advanced directives regarding privacy. Privacy, it's crucial and it's very important in Iraq. especially it's actually important in any healthcare setting, but in Iraq it has special concerns. For example, I would like you to imagine a patient who has a cancer. So definitely he will ask about what we call prognosis, so life expectancy.
Yeah.
Such information, such medical information, you can build on a lot of your decisions in life. For example, your inheritance, how you will divide your inheritance upon your children. Such information, if the patient wants to keep him having a cancer a secret for his family, it is his right. But again, it's Iraq is not just the legal system in Iraq is just not like it is in the US. We don't have HIPAA, so all of our medical records are paper-based and are stored in the hospital. Of course, they are subjected to damage. They are, of course, subjected to being lost. But again, it is a paper system. So regarding the confidentiality and the privacy, it's maybe difficult to protect. And usually, health issues in Iraq, all the family members get involved in. So sometimes even like when you discuss with the patient, his health issue, maybe one of his sons or his daughters will be there. So regarding to the case you presented, if someone came to the hospital with his parent or one of his relatives, and he suggests a type of treatment, again, it could be a person of interest. Maybe he has an interest of such treatment against that. Sometimes, for example, the patient may need a surgery, and the patient relatives refuses that. Yeah. Again, it's a person of interest. Maybe he has an interest regarding stopping this surgery.
So that gonna let you face two issues. First, this thing, and second, maybe if we talk about, the health sector and all these things. It is different really in the US and Europe from here, but doctor, do the students here take some knowledge about these things? I know for the fact that that's way from the yes. medicine, because they are law students.
Well, we don't have anything regarding the intersection of medicine and law. But where did all of this advanced directives, health directives, where did they arise out of? It's basically contract law. And actually preceding that in these personal areas, you would talk about simply a last will and testament. Someone providing for instructions after death. That's a contract. This is a different type of contract. A contract made while you are alive to determine what should happen in the event that you become incapacitated, and you're simply giving a relative or some other person the authority to make decisions on your behalf. In my view, Iraq has contract law. I cannot think of, there's a general principle. If it's not forbidden, it's allowed. So as long as by contract I can act, it's called freedom of contract. Yeah. I could take this sample document that I brought with me, and it can be used in Iraq. Would it be enforced? I don't know. This would be the question, because it could be regarded as novel. It could be regarded as, for the first time, a seminal case, for example. But as long as Iraqi law allows for contracting, and this is not forbidden by the law, then it can be enforced. So you don't need special legislation. Of course, if you want special legislation, it's nice. But for example, HIPAA did not suddenly create healthcare directives. Healthcare directives are old. I had a healthcare directive for both my mother and father, and this would go back to the 1980s when I had them, 1970s, because they became concerned about what happens in the event that they were struck by a particular illness. a stroke, for example. So this type of thing was not generated by HIPAA.
Yeah.
HIPAA is just, it federalized it. So HIPAA, because the United States is a combination. You've got on the federal level, and of course you have it on the state level. So state laws can actually provide greater protection than you would get under the HIPAA privacy rule or advanced directive. So I don't want your audience to think that HIPAA suddenly just introduced everything new. No.
There are things that comes from a long time ago.
Yes. And the other thing, privacy is an ancient notion. And of course, when you're on a paper document system, you still have privacy rights. Actually, when you transfer or make a transition to an electronic system, your privacy rights become more vulnerable. This is my opinion.
When you go into computers and these things.
Well, you have, as the doctor says, now everything is interconnected.
Yeah.
So one healthcare provider is linked to another healthcare provider by cables, by wireless, and they can transmit the information in a second. If we want to go back to the paper-based system, let's say of the 1950s, 1960s in Europe and the United States, of course it's slower. The papers have to be collected. The papers have to perhaps be delivered by a courier. It's a very different system, but the privacy element, it never changes. The privacy element neither derives from the paper nor from the new technology. It precedes it, and it's a matter of question of what degree of privacy do you want to give to particular data. And that's for each policymaker to decide. So we've had policymakers in the United States with HIPAA, and we've had policymakers in the EU with the General Data Protection Regulation. And they have made certain choices. And, we could sit here all day and say, one thing is GDPR, it covers all data. HIPAA is just health. GDPR in the European Union, it's any information that can identify a specific person. So it is very general, very broad. It captures all of your information.
Not only.
So it's not only your health data. But health is set aside as more protected, particularly when it comes to genetics. Sharing your genetic information. It gets higher protection under GDPR than your general information.
Exactly. As Dr. Jan mentioned, transitioning from an paper-based system to electronic system, it has enormous advantages, including like connections or communication between two health facilities. For example, if I want to transfer a patient from a certain hospital to another, it's going to be easier. It's going to be definitely easier. So you have a full medical record, all the drugs and the procedures we performed in our hospital, and what the next hospital or the destination hospital should do or should perform, and the exact reason why we are referring this patient. Additionally, now we are in an era of research. So I think having electronic records would definitely advance research. In the same time, we have a privacy issue regarding this. Let me give a real life example. Actually, let's make them two. Regarding developing AI models, now we are facing the AI revolution. AI is getting intricate with many fields, including medicine and especially radiology. Now we are seeing, for example, can you imagine Google Gemini can now interpret the CT scans and the MRIs. There is a famous case study that AI model was challenged against 10 of the best radiologists in the US. Can you imagine that the AI margin of error of diagnosis was 1.5? So basically he diagnosed 98.5 of the cases right, compared to humans, which is 93 only. 93% only.
It's higher from the human.
It's higher for
No,
the
higher from the AI.
For the AI. 93, 98.5 true or right cases compared to 93 for the physicians, for the humans. So the margin of error of humans is higher actually, 7% margin of error.
Yeah.
So basically, how this AI model learned such complex issue by taking real case scenarios, by taking patient data and transform them to this AI so he can learn. And by the way, this thing is in itself raising a dilemma. If, for example, an AI diagnosed or misdiagnosed a patient. So let's imagine a patient whose CT was reviewed by an AI and he misdiagnosed this patient. Who are we going to blame? The AI or the company that developed the AI? The hospital?
You're talking locally or worldwide?
Worldwide, actually. It's a worldwide challenge.
It's gonna go back to the company.
This is a question I couldn't answer, but I think the doctors raised a great point, because AI will not only deal with the analysis of a medical issue, it will deal with the analysis of a legal issue. Mm-hmm. So you're essentially going to have, in a way, I can't say robots, but we'll have, in a way, AI physicians or AI medical analysts. You'll have AI providing legal advice. What if it gives the improper legal advice? Well,
the wrong advice.
So these are the doctors raising, really very fascinating in cutting edge legal issues. But I want to get back to his what he said about the importance of sharing data. Like, for example, personally, I don't have any problem sharing my data. There might be one exception. Let's say you have a psychological problem. Society is simply not ready to deal with any sort of what we would call mental illness. Exactly. If that information gets into the wrong hands, you could be denied a job. It could have massive effects even on your social life.
Yeah.
So, when you look at Europe, for example, and even HIPAA, the notes that a mental health physician takes, they're given the highest protection. You can't get them. Mm-hmm. Probably that will change as people realize that there's no difference between some suffering psychologically than suffering physically, because it's all physical. Mm-hmm. So I think the taboo will diminish over time. But I think the doctor brings up a good point. If you're cutting off the flow of information, you're stopping the advancement of knowledge, because as the doctor correctly pointed out, machines learn on data. And the higher quality data, the higher quality AI you will get, or output you will get from this machine. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how the culture in Iraq would see this sharing of information. I think U.S. is pretty open. I would even say in Europe it's pretty much the same. But in this region, let's say Middle East, North Africa, what is
it's different.
What is the view? Is it considered? Yes. So maybe the doctor could
what do you think,
some
Doctor?
insight.
Actually, now we are seeing the seed or the nucleus of electronic health or medical records in Iraq. It started being implemented by Ministry of Health, and it's baby steps, let's be honest. But it's important baby steps. Unfortunately, there is some takeoffs, but it's a point in the right directions. For example, when they provide the patient with a questionnaire, it lists some common conditions. For example, if he has a DM or diabetes mellitus, if he has hypertension, heart failure, and he should click such boxes. Again, it's a paper presented to the patient. This paper, when we want to insert it into the electronic system, it would be scanned and uploaded. It is not. It's not. It's not like, let's say, it's not technically right, because you have, again, what you have now is a JPG picture or JPG picture on the online.
Yeah.
You can't use this to sort out information. So if you have 10 patients, you have 10 pictures. You can't use such pictures to get important information. That's why we say the privacy and electronic medical record is very important, because it will help us guide our facilities to develop much more specific and much more advanced healthcare regarding the issues that we are having. And it will definitely help us in research. It will give us much more in-depth information about, for example, the number of patients who has type 2 diabetes. What are the drugs or the treatments that he's taking? So we should provide such medications in our hospitals or in our healthcare facilities. So again, we are taking baby steps towards that, but it's kind of shy baby steps, and it definitely needs improvement with time.
Well, we dived.
Definitely regarding another aspect of privacy is actually medical education. When you teach doctors on a patient in a hospital setting, all the hospitals in Iraq, or most of the hospitals in Iraq actually, they are teaching hospitals. So by law, any patient, once he enters such facility, he consents that he would be seen by doctors who are professional doctors, specialist doctors, and at the same time by interns and trainees who seek medical education. By the way, it's a big ethical dilemma. We need patients to learn, and at the same time, patient needs a professional health care. And by the way, if you don't have patients that allowing new doctors to learn upon, you wouldn't have a professionals at the end. So it's like a vicious cycle. You need doctors to train, and at the same time you need the patient wants a professional healthcare without other trainees. For example, in surgery, we definitely need a surgeon who is an experienced surgeon who has years of experience, and he became unexperienced by learning upon other patients. So it's kind of moral and ethical dilemma, but there's no way around it. So again, any patient enters a hospital, he consents by law that there would be a trainees around him. And by the way, when we look at the body of evidence and research we have, most patients who are treated in a teaching hospital, they receive a better care than those who are in a general or private hospital. This might sound counterintuitive. Basically, you are in a hospital with junior doctors and specialist doctors. So you might think that the risk of malpractice or medical error would be doubled or tripled regarding to a facility with a private hospital with all specialized doctors. The caveat here is basically any specialist in a teaching hospital, in the back of his mind, he thinks that I'm dealing with junior doctors, so they are more likely to make a mistake or a medical error. So he is double checking everything they are doing, compared to a private hospital where every physician in the back of
he's doing it for one time, maybe depending on his experience.
Exactly, and all the physicians and all the nursing staff are all experienced in his mind, so he will then double check on them. That's why the quality of care in the teaching hospital is statistically better.
It's more,
I'd just like to add one point, as the doctor probably knows, since he's worked in both the United States and in Europe. Research teaching hospitals are highly regarded in the United States. They are some of the best institutions of care available. And the other thing I would like to, it's anecdotal evidence, but in Latvia, which is a very highly tech country, and I have a residence there.
Latvia.
All health data is electronically consolidated in a single database. So for example, if I go see my physician, she will get on the laptop. Everything about me comes up. It's all tied to what's called a personal identification number. So she will immediately notice, oh, you recently had a blood test and these are the results.
Yeah.
Oh, you recently had this kind of, I'll say, not operation, but examination. She immediately has the results. She has a list of every single medication I've taken since I first registered in the system. And in that sense, what the doctor's talking about, I think it's enormously beneficial for the patient and for the physician.
Yeah.
She can share that information with someone she refers me to simply with the click of a mouse. Okay. And it's very beneficial for the new physician who would be treating me to have all of this information. At a instantaneously, basically. Right
in the time with them. Well, last thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to start with you, Dr. John, is the marketing and the let's say advertising field when it goes of medication with both the OTC and maybe prescriptions, and the difference maybe in the US and the Europe.
Yes, there is a difference between the US and EU, and this mainly turns on the fact that the U.S. Constitution has the First Amendment, and it's subdivided into categories. Political speech is number one, but they also protect what's called commercial speech. And commercial speech at the present moment, the advertisement of both OTC and prescription medicine are protected by that First Amendment. Of course, everything is regulated by the Federal Drug Administration, so everything has to be vetted by this agency before it goes out for marketing. And of course, the marketing must contain both the benefits and the risks, but as the doctor and I have spoken, where are the risks? You're not going to see them. They're going to be at the bottom of the advertisement, or basically virtually invisible. If we cross the ocean, we have a different system. OTC is basically the same, and it is impermissible to advertise or to market your prescription drug product in the European Union right now. And probably it will stay that way. Well, they don't have anything like the First Amendment that almost requires this double approach.
Exactly, like when I went to the US, it was very strange to me to see ads on the TV talking about antihypertensive drugs, drugs to treat hypertension, or drugs sometimes to treat epilepsy. It's to me it was very odd, because we don't have that in Iraq. And
that's forbidden. Yeah.
That's forbidden. Yeah. And by the way, it's very difficult to me to see like advertising for such drugs that we needed years of experience and teaching and medical education, and to learn the side effects of, and when to use such drug, at what dose you give this drug, and for how many. You can't basically treat such drugs just like toothpaste. You can't put them on the TV. But I think it's as Dr. John said, it's for the free of commons. It's the right of speech, the right to advertise.
Maybe making you have multi options.
And multi options. Actually, in Iraq, we the only allowed drug to advertise is the OTC, the drugs that you can get without a prescription.
Yeah.
For example, like Tylenol, Advil, Pastol. For example, maybe Benadryl, such simple drugs that are usually safe. Even once you get a high dose, it's very safe drugs. We call the therapeutic window, therapeutic index. It has a high threshold or high therapeutic window.
But you can give it without prescription.
Without prescription, they can take it from any nearby pharmacy. The real issue actually in Iraq and advertising is actually the supplements, the drug supplements, like for example calcium supplements, for example vitamin D3, which is a very big deal. Vitamins, actually, vitamin B complexes and others. In the United States, as much I know, they are considered a type of food, and they are not FDA regulated. So the FDA wouldn't decide this is not a drug, this is a food. So it is under the authority of Ministry of Commerce. So basically, you are allowed to see such supplements even in the supermarket. In Iraq, most of the such supplements you can see in the pharmacy
only.
In the pharmacy only. By the way, there is no law regulates such thing. You can buy supplements and sell them in supermarkets, because again they are not drugs and they are not FDA regulated and they are not FDA approved. So exactly, the situation in Iraq is kind of different, by the way, and all the other countries, when I checked, for example, Japan takes the same approach, China takes the same approach. You are only allowed to advertise about OTCs. Because again, a lot of prescription drugs, they need medical knowledge. They need a professional who can withstand the burden of responsibility of prescribing such drugs.
Yeah, the just to add to what the doctor's saying would be the labeling requirements for something that do not fall under the FDA. You must say on the label, not FDA approved. You also should disclose that you don't have any medical data demonstrating its efficiency. But despite all of that, especially if you see the bodybuilding section of any supermarket, you see all of these different supplements that are available, and of course, yes, they are advertised as well and only subject to labeling but not control.
I think,
but in the EU, I don't know, but in the EU they're all over the place. I mean, so I don't know the law, but can you buy them? Yes, you can go into a commercial center and purchase these products as you would in the United States.
We have a lot of supplements here.
Exactly, there's a lot
stores for supplements.
And by the way, if you check, there would be written in small letters, they are not FDA approved, or sometimes they write you should consult your doctors in small handwriting, maybe in the corner or somewhere.
So do the Ministry of Health should check that?
Actually, yes, and there is a full system regarding the drugs, but not the supplements. All the drugs in the Ministry of Health, they are checked and they are labeled, and this label is actually QR code. It's you can check even the price. They are
of course, I know about that. I was talking about only the supplements.
No, the supplements are not regulated because again they are not considered a drug.
As a drug,
it's not a prescription drug. Additionally, I think we need more regulations regarding the advertising of medical procedures. For example, in the social media. In TV, because there is, TV channels, they are well accredited, and you should provide a lot of documents in order to establish
copyrights.
There's copyrights. But in social media world, when
you can do whatever you want sometimes.
Actually, you can advertise for drugs and even for medical procedures, and sometimes such advertisements are not provided by fully compensated, fully equipped medical personnel. This is, I think, an area of no regulation, because we don't have enough regulations.
That's
to
right.
regulate
That's why
the advertising.
This is happening.
Exactly. The advertising of medical advices on medical procedures and drugs, and even, for example, not cosmetics, is actually like rejuvenation therapy, for example, laser therapy, and others regarding skincare, for example.
The skincare.
Skincare industry, let's say. It's heavily not regulated because it's on social media. There's many platforms, and
maybe that's why we have a lot of bloggers.
Exactly, influencers. So yes, I think we need to implement kind of policies that regulate advertising of drugs on social media, but it's an emerging subject. I don't know how the United States dealt with such things.
Well, one thing I want to tell the doctor is business develops much faster than law. This is a general rule. The law will never catch up. The other element is, and I understand the doctor's concern about, let's call it consumer protection or health protection. But when the law begins to intervene, you better make sure that whoever is writing the law has a very, very good understanding of what it is they're trying to regulate. The other thing you have to remember, whatever regulation you write now is likely to be obsolete in 5 years, because commercial developments, it's non-stop. It's like a unstoppable locomotive.
Yeah.
And in many instances, you'll find that they begin to regulate in areas that they don't fully understand, and the law tends to impede and hinder the very effects it was intended to achieve. So looking to the law as a full source solution is perhaps a little bit myth. The legislators must truly understand the object of the regulation. And I think that, as the doctor mentioned, social media, influencers, so on and so forth, they're very, very recent developments. You know, to get a legislator to move and enact law could take years. You know, some pending legislation can sit in a committee for months, perhaps never to be enacted.
Yeah. Well, actually, I hope that we clarify things today by talking about these things, because I'm not gonna say this is like insights, but I'm just gonna say this is a conversation with my really nice and good guests today, and I'm happy today by hosting you, Dr. John Bيرك, the Dean of College of Law, of course, for the first time here, and I hope it's not gonna be the last time here.
I hope not, and I have learned much more today than I ever imagined, and I'm going away with more questions than I had coming in.
That's really nice.
And I thank the doctor for sharing his experiences and knowledge and wisdom with me today.
Well, Dr. Abdulgabbar, as always, thank you for being here for us, talking about all these.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. John, for being here today. I definitely agree with you. We raised more questions than we provided answers, and it would be definitely such podcast and such speech would pave the way for permanent solutions in the future.
The raising of questions is a good thing.
Well, we're gonna have a lot of episodes next, and it's gonna be special episodes with you, dear viewers. Everyone gonna see this podcast episode. I hope you first enjoyed it, and of course enjoyed my guests. I enjoyed it, actually. So until next time, I'm gonna see that there's a lot of new guests, and also there's new topics that we're gonna talk about, especially in medicine. So until next time, we're gonna see you. This is Mahar from AOIB. Goodbye.